I'm Katie Cartman, Director of Religious Education here at Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church in Houston, Texas. Our beloved community of faith, reason, and affection welcomes all to grow in mind and spirit as together we build a better world. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome to you and invite you to fill out our visitor card, either in the pews or online, so you can receive more information about Emerson and our activities. Again, welcome to all. We are a church in many places, some of us here at the pews and some joining us on YouTube from home or wherever we might be. And our world is a different one than it was in early 2020. Our worship service has changed accordingly. People on site sit in every other pew with space between families. We've put a few offering baskets at the front and back of the sanctuary for people to drop off their offering throughout the service, rather than passing the plates. And only our musicians are singing right now, as the rest of us learn new ways to experience our hymns. Please remember to put your phones in worship mode. That means they should be silent, but you can keep on texting if you want to share the good news. Following the worship service, folks in the pews may head out to the courtyard and the playground to chat, and we'll also have social time on Zoom, a chance for you to gather in smaller groups to discuss the service and what's going on in our lives. So let's get started with our prelude. Sean?
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Michelle LaGrave, the interim minister of this congregation, and I joyfully welcome you to this, our Thanksgiving service. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
The wheel of the year has turned again. Once more, the Thanksgiving season has arrived. How shall we sing our song of gratitude now? For what shall we give thanks? For this moment, for friends near and far, for our breath, for love, for courage and clarity, for strength, for delight, for laughter, for beauty, for the tables around which we gather, for the food we enjoy with friends, seasoned with love and memory, for the sun and moon and stars in the sky, for the trees who have seen so much and still stand proud, stretching themselves to the sky, for the bright voices of children, for the wisdom of elders, for actions that bless the world, for hard work that makes a difference, for music and art and celebration, for generosity, for compassion, for endurance, for joy, and for hope. For all these things we give thanks as we worship together.
The flame we light, the flame we are about to light, holds our history, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. The flame we are about to light holds our future, the hope, the love, the joy, and the pain. The flame we are about to light holds our present. As we reconcile our past with our future, let us be grateful in the now. This morning, we will join in a ritual offering, communal offering, as Julia and Juan and Ariel sing our opening hymn. Those of us who have brought gifts for the women's shelter, women's home, will process forward and drop their gifts off in the front of the chancel so that together we might participate in an act of communal giving. Remember to keep socially distant as you process, and maybe we'll start from this side of the sanctuary and then go around that way. So as you are willing and able, please rise either in body or spirit for our opening hymn. Come, ye thankful people, come.
Wednesday was kind of a long day. By the time I finished with meetings and done a few errands, it was completely dark when I got home. And I could just barely make out the silhouette of somebody on a roof. In reality, it was my neighbor putting up his Christmas lights. But for me, my mind instantly flashed back to a story from my past. See, my grandpa Jim used to climb up on the roof every time it snowed to sweep off the snow. Friends, don't try this at home, okay? See, their house was just 6 miles from Lake Michigan on the south side of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So when it snowed a lot. We called it lake effect snow. If you were 50 miles inland, you might get half an inch. Right on the lake, you were getting 5 inches. And as an engineer, Grandpa Jim was very concerned about the weight of the snow on his roof. Everyone in his life wondered aloud. So you think the roof can't handle the distributed weight of a few inches of snow, but somehow it's okay for you to tramp around up there. But he was certain and exceedingly stubborn. Neighbors would look out their windows and shake their heads. Family, friends, and passerby suggested safety measures. So today we're going to be talking about history, and specifically that the starting point of history isn't dates and figures and places, it's stories. They remind us of what is most important, particularly when we're talking about family stories. The stories we hold close say a lot about us and what we value. On the other hand, sometimes there are stories we do not tell, or we do not tell completely, especially when the truth is complicated or does not match who we think we are. And sometimes we've just never heard the whole story. I don't know if you've looked at a calendar recently, but we're coming up on the holidays. Not only are they rich stomping grounds for creating new stories, but they can be a great time to ask about the stories you remember, whether you're celebrating with family in person, on Zoom, or calling one another between the main course and the pie. In my case, I called my mom and I asked a few questions. 20 seconds in, she sighed. You're telling another story for church, aren't you? But she answered my questions, and at the end she told me a piece of the story I had never heard before. So you may recall from other stories I've told that my parents grew up next door to one another. So this part of the story comes from my dad's mother. At some point, Grandma looked out her window and once again saw Grandpa Jim sweeping the latest snowfall off the roof. She opened the window and said, "One of these days, you're going to fall off that roof." His retort, "Well, tell me when, and I won't go up that day."
Giving out of what is our own is a transformative act. As a community of faith, we collect an offering, not for ourselves or for our congregation, but to give to others as a collective action of our community and as a way to live out our shared values. Indeed, if you've been wondering how you can suggest a 501c3 organization our church might support, this is your month. Our outreach committee is taking nominations for our 2022 offerings now. Check the e-blast and get your nominations in by November 30th. Please give with a generous heart to support the November Share the Plate recipients. This month, 75% of our offering goes to Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas. The Carrizo Comecrudo people lived along the South Texas Rio Grande Delta, a tribe who have long survived the occupation of their homelands and spiritual souls and are moving forward with their mission for recognition, connection, and mutual support. And as always, 25% of our offering will go to the Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, feeding Houston seniors. We have 3 ways to give. You can text the number on the screen, go to our webpage for online giving, or you can put in our offering basket or mail the check to church.
Please find a comfortable place to be or in your seats, and place your feet flat on the floor if you can and if you will, so that you might feel grounded, more connected to the earth, which nourishes and sustains us all. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, and take a deep breath in. As together we enter into a time of meditation followed by silence. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history of those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living. Now, let us enter into the silence together. Amen, and blessed be.
As we gather this morning, let us be a people of not forgetting. Let us practice holding collective memories that might otherwise slip into that enormous void that sucks at and corrodes any future we hold dear. Let us practice honoring truth-telling up from the past that must come fully into the now, lest we falter and fail, lest the whole remain in pieces. Let not our need for comfort or simplicity, for easy forgiveness or false pardon smother the heartbreak that still needs healing. Let us practice resilience with reckoning. Let us marry memory and promise. Let us dance in the tension we find there. Let us rest in the integrity we cultivate there. Let us be partners with the possibility that emerges there. It is good we gather.
Listen to the voices of the First Nation. Listen to the voices of the First Nation, calling out the messages of Listen to the voices of the old women. Listen to the voices of the old women. Calling out the messages of the moon and sea. Telling us what we need to know in order to be free. Listen to the voices of the old women. Listen to the voices of the young children. Listen to the voices of the young children. Calling out the messages of the heart and soul, telling us what we used to know before the lies were told. Listen to the voices of the young children. Listen to the voices of the young children. Listen to the voices of the old women. Listen to the voices of the First Nations. Listen to the voices of the living.
As a youth studying history as an academic discipline for the first time, I was told that the reason we study history is because those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. I still believe this to be true, and it certainly has informed my ministry. I am an interim minister after all. And part of what I do is support congregations in learning and understanding their history, particularly the patterns of behavior that inform congregational life. Once known and understood, a congregation, its members, and its leaders can intentionally and thoughtfully choose whether to continue or change their historical patterns. And yet, despite the potential benefits of learning and understanding their congregation's history, I often encounter resistance to doing so. Studying history can be uncomfortable. There are times when hard truths surface and must be confronted, and the temptation to avoid doing so is strong. So yes, I still believe a reason to study history is because those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. And yet, for me, the study of history has become both more complex and more urgent, not just on a congregational and local level, but on a national level as well. David J. Silverman, a professor of history at George Washington University, in his book, This Land is Their Land, says this about the study of history. Serious, critical history tends to be hard on the living. It challenges us to see distortions embedded in the heroic national origin myths we have been taught since childhood. It takes enemies demonized by previous generations and treats them as worthy of understanding in their particular context. Ideological absolutes, civility and savagery, liberty and tyranny, and especially us and them, begin to blur. People from our own society who are not supposed to matter and whose historical experiences show how the injustices of the past have shaped the injustices of the present, move from the shadows into the light. Because critical history challenges assumptions and authority, it often leaves us feeling uncomfortable. Yet it also has the capacity to help us become more humble and humane. Such is the case with the story, the myth of the first Thanksgiving. Last year I spoke to you about my belief that despite all the complexities of history that preceded and followed the Thanksgiving celebration of 1621, the spiritual gift of that days-long feast was the presence of gratitude. That remains true. Yet the need to further explore those complexities also remains true, at least for most of us, and especially as we explore the theme of holding history during this Thanksgiving season. The national myth surrounding and of our Thanksgiving holiday remains strong. You may know that for many people this Thursday, this Thanksgiving, will be recognized as a day of mourning. This has been so since 1970, as the Wampanoag and other Native Americans have sought to make a fuller, more accurate accounting of the first Thanksgiving more publicly known. This has been an uphill battle, as the national myth remains strongly entrenched. So while this sermon cannot be a history lesson, revisiting some of this history this morning is surely warranted. I encourage you to further your own study of history this week as we enter into the Thanksgiving holiday and beyond. Silverman's book is a great place to start. To begin, the Pilgrims, who were really a mixed group of separatists and strangers, were not the first Europeans the Wampanoags encountered. Far from it. Europeans, English, French, and many others had been, let's say, visiting their land for many decades. Though there were moments of levity and times of trade beneficial to both sides, most of these recorded encounters eventually turned violent. Europeans kidnapped and sold dozens of Native Americans into slavery, mostly in Spain, or brought them back to England against their will, trained them in English language and customs, and used them as guides and interpreters in future missions, a different form of slavery. People were shot at, killed, stolen from, made fun of, taunted and tormented, and graves were desecrated. And yes, some of this behavior went both ways, which is why a deeper understanding of and analysis of the dynamics of power, intersectionality, and colonization are essential to the critical study of history. This was their land, after all. So the Wampanoags knew Europeans, knew enough to be wary. This was not a naive first encounter at all. And yet they helped these new settlers to survive, probably folding them into their concept of sachems and hoping to form political alliances for their mutual protection. The Wampanoag had recently suffered from an epidemic or series of epidemics from 1616 to 1619. Perhaps we can relate just a little bit, although our experience is incredibly mild compared to what the Wampanoag experienced. They were in mourning, and they had been traumatized. Everyone was sick at the same time. All ages of adults, all ages of children, all ages of youth. Many, many of their loved ones had died in a horrific way, and many of their bones still lie exposed to the elements scattered across the land. There had been no one well enough to care for the sick, to bring them water, to bring them food, or to bury their dead, because they were all sick. Those who survived were greatly decreased in number and at risk from hostile neighbors, specifically the Narragansett to the west. Such was the context in which that first Thanksgiving, first in quotes, was celebrated. The Thanksgiving holiday, we know, did not continue after that on a regular basis every November, year after year, up until the present day, in a direct line from that Thanksgiving feast of 1621. Rather, the holiday emerged from the Puritan practice of colonial and later state governors randomly calling for days of Thanksgiving when things were going well, and which were celebrated by spending the day in church, fasting, and giving thanks to God. It wasn't until 1863 when Sarah Josepha Hale successfully urged President Abraham Lincoln to make Thanksgiving a national holiday that the holiday began to take shape as it is now. This happened during the Civil War and was intended to evoke feelings of national unity. To further complicate matters of historical accuracy, the colonial revival period of the late 19th and early 20th centuries arose with its romantic feelings of nostalgia for a past perceived to be simpler in values and in style. It wasn't just an architectural movement, it was a cultural movement as well. Historical reproductions and reenactments became common, with a goal of reclaiming older values, seen as more important than a critical view of history. This was a time when many myths about pilgrims arose. Pilgrims and Puritans and colonial times, all of it. Including those entrenched Thanksgiving myths we are all still working to debunk today. In congregations, I'm often asked, why do we need to revisit our history? We have already done that. The answer for both our congregations and our nation is that new knowledge is always waiting to be discovered and new understandings applied. When I was young, in elementary school, we learned that pilgrims wore black and white and ate turkey and played games with friendly Indians for the first Thanksgiving. We made pilgrim hats and Indian headdresses out of construction paper and traced our hands with crayons to make turkeys. When I was older, in high school, I learned that much of that history was inaccurate. Pilgrims wore colors. The Indians brought deer. No one ate turkey or wore headdresses with lots of feathers. Later still, as a history and anthropology major in college, I learned more of the complex history of Native European interactions during colonization much of this from direct experience and primary research, and I began to feel the injustice of it all. Later still, I learned to apply power analyses and think about intersectionalities. I am still learning, and I will always be learning. In our congregations, we look to our congregational history to understand our patterns and choose which patterns to break and which to keep, all in service of becoming stronger and healthier congregation, one that is more welcoming to all, ever-widening circles. We also look to our local and national history, frequently reviewing, re-examining, and renewing our understanding, the goal of applying what we have learned to create a better world for all, both inside and outside our doors. A critical study of history, including the history of Thanksgiving 1621, leads us to a greater understanding of where we all came from, the injustices which shaped us, the ways in which we survived or didn't survive, the ways in which we harmed or were harmed, and the social structures which have oppressed and continue to oppress. We have learned to listen to the voices. This greater understanding, in turn, then leads us to a greater compassion. We feel the harm that has been done and continues to be done. It is only then, when we both understand intellectually and feel emotionally, that we become capable of building a better world and can choose to change for the better. As Silverman has said, critical history can be hard on the living. But as one gracious Aquinnah Wampanoag elder once told me, we do ourselves no good by hiding from the truth. I think she meant all of us. So for this Thanksgiving, let us return once again to the spiritual practice of gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to revisit history, for the academics who continue to research and who bring us the possibilities of new understanding, for the present-day Wampanoag who will not let us forget, for the ability to feel compassion, for the ability to listen, to change our hearts and minds, and for the ability to grow. And as we celebrate the abundance in our lives, let us also give in the same ways that we are blessed. Amen, and blessed be. Now let us all rise, either in body or spirit, and join in moving or swaying or singing at home to our closing hymn, number 145.
Thank you.
With gratitude for all of the blessings of our lives, those known and those yet to be known, let us go now in peace, with love in our hearts, kindness on our lips, and compassion at our fingertips. Our worship has ended. Now our service begins. Amen, and blessed be.
But first, a few announcements. At 12:30 today, we'll have our third of 4 town hall meetings about our upcoming governance vote. We've had 3 years of study by a very dedicated team looking at our Constitution, bylaws, and policies. If you'd like to be a part of that, again, it'll be back in this space at 12:30. The last meeting will be on December 2nd on Zoom. We will have the congregational meeting, as I just said, on December 5th at 12:30. And next Sunday, our own Ken McLeod will be in the pulpit. Social time will happen in just a few minutes, both out in the courtyard and the playground and on the Zoom. But first, postlude.